Elisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Glad to be here, Sarah. I think I have no doubt we're going to have a fun conversation.
Oh, yes. Actually, Elisa and I just spent some time together recording a podcast episode for her podcast, which is
Yeah.
the God Hears Her podcast. So you guys need to go check that out. They
Yep.
have stories of women who are learning and walking with the Lord and knowing that He sees them and hears them, and it's beautiful. So
Yeah.
anyway, Elisa, I want you to tell our listeners just a little bit about you, where you came from, and where you are in life right now.
Sure, you betcha. Well, I've been around a while now. So I grew up in a non-Christian home and came to know God actually when I was around 16, even though I had loved him all my life. But I heard more about him through the ministry of Young Life. He had his hand on my life, and it's been a beautiful journey. I wrote a lot about my very personal memoir in a book called The Beauty of Broken, my story, and likely yours too.
I know, I was
And
going to say, that could be the title of all of our
of
stories.
all of our stories.
Yeah.
And it's just really about coming from a broken home through divorce and alcoholism, and just committing that I would raise a perfectly intact second family that fell and broke through its own issues. And my husband and I continue now. We're 46 years married. But there have just been so many surprises and unexpected turns and beauties, beautiful things that came out of brokenness in and around us. And so that's probably the theme, of my life. When I'd been doing some work in radio. I've been in radio for 50 years, and got the call to apply to become the first president of an international movement of moms called MOPS International. It had been around for
Yes.
15 years, and I was invited
Wait,
to
sorry.
apply.
It had been around 15 years
Yeah, it was a
when you...
grassroots movement.
Okay. Yeah.
Just moms, nonprofits would get a hold of it and get the word out. These were in the days before social media. But the need was so strong for moms to gather. And the originals, that's what we called them, the original MOPS leaders, all volunteers, were so passionate that their neighbors come to know Jesus that, MOPS is kind of a relationship evangelism ministry. Anyway, it just, and the board realized it needed more formal leadership. So that's when they invited me. And I had been to seminary. I had been a dean of women at a Bible college. So I had some leadership experience, but
Yeah.
I guffawed when they called me because my kids came to us through adoption and I've never been pregnant. And I thought, how in the world would God want me to lead a mothering organization? So
Yeah.
I'll pause there and you can
Yeah.
poke around
But
in
isn't
Yes.
that also a theme that we could all
Yes.
say, like, why would God want me to do
Yeah,
this? There's so many other people
exactly.
more well qualified, or whatever we have
Totally.
in our head.
Totally.
Okay, so what did you learn about God and about yourself during that time of taking the lead there at MOPS?
Yeah. Well, after I pulled myself up off the ground, that he would even invite me into the process, and I doubled my therapy sessions, which I highly recommend. I was in the grocery store, and it was a real seminal moment. I felt like the Lord was saying, just look around at all the other moms around you, Elisa. Today they would be in messy buns and yoga pants, and then they were in sweats and ponytails. But same thing. And he said, they don't know what they're doing either. My kids were 5 and 3 in that time. And I was ambivalent about taking on that responsibility. But the Lord just said, get up on a platform of vulnerability and share what you don't know. And then came the phrase, give me your deficits and I'll make them your offering. And that's what he did. And so I was pretty honest. In a day where parenting looked more formulaic, do this, do that, especially now that you know Jesus, I was pretty honest. And I tried the formulaic thing for a very long time until it didn't work. And then I was like, whoa, okay. But that was the theme throughout the years. I was able to lead there for 20 years. And MOPS International is now called the MomCo Global, just so you know. So if you want to be in a MOPS group, a MomCo meetup, they call them now. Same stuff, just for new generations. I'm so proud of them. Just go to momco.co, I believe it is, and connect up, wherever you are in your mothering journey. But, the real tragedy is that we think we're supposed to do mothering all by ourselves and do it all right and do it all. And God never meant us to mother alone. So that ministry is still here for everybody.
Boy, that has been so true in my life with mothering. I mean, I'm so grateful. I was placed in this lovely church in Dayton, Tennessee when I became a mom. And so many families there were in that next season. Like they had several kids and they were homeschooling or they were whatever they were doing. I was watching. And that is the way that I learned best, was doing life alongside other women, which is kind of what the MOPS idea is too, is like get together, learn from each other, learn from the Lord. And I mean, I even just looking back now in the season of life that I'm in, looking back to those early mothering years, just watching moms talk, how they talk to their kids was so influential to me, because I'm an only child. So I didn't have conflict and, stuff like that my kids have with each other as siblings. And so anyway, I love that. So what did you learn about your own giftings or things that you're good at during that time?
Interesting, the irony of your name, Strong Women. I'm a strong woman. I mean, I'm a survivor from a broken home. I'm also a 3 on the Enneagram, so I'm an achiever, a performer. I like to do things. I mean, I'll have done more by 3 o'clock than most people have, and that doesn't necessarily mean I'm cool, okay? Just means I have that driven gene. So there were a lot of times I would make mistakes, in really driving too hard in an effort to reach moms and make a difference and change the world. And, the sense of urgency, almost panic. And that leaked over into my leadership. It wasn't always a beautiful thing. But at the other hand, and I hope this sounds like I cool, but on the other hand, I'm a visionary and I have contagious energy and I attract change makers, and people wanted to be around me and do what I was doing and join me. And, so, what you do is you learn how God made you.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful thing to learn to be a part of a team, to lead a team, to be responsible for a team, and to understand that the team is leading more teams. I remember one time going into what we called MomCon, our international convention, and there were going to be 6,000 women. It was in Nashville, Tennessee. And before we opened the doors for everybody to run in, I remember sitting in a chair and just praying over that room and realizing every chair would represent a mom and probably her spouse and probably a kid or two and probably a couple of grandparents and then her leaders in her group and then a couple of neighbors and then a pastor in a church. And I was just, there were tens of thousands of people represented that would be influenced by that. And I think when you get called into, and it truly was a call, into that kind of responsibility, it's a hugely humbling and ridiculously stretching journey. So I was broken most of the time.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the season. Okay, so you have 2 kids. And they're grown. Yeah. So tell me about this season of life now.
Yeah. This season, my daughter's in her early 40s and my son is about to turn 40. My son is married and they have a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and expecting another one in just a little bit, another boy, 2 boys. And they've been married about a little over 10 years, got married a little bit later, and again, read the book for the journey there, but a beautiful journey that God brought them together. My daughter's been on a journey. She's had a lot of pain in her life and a lot of joy. She was a teenage mom. We saw her get married after, and I haven't talked about this much, but her husband of 18 years just passed away this last year.
Goodness.
And it's been a really trying time. The oldest child is 21, and this was not his birth dad, but they also have a 10-year-old son. So I have 4 grandchildren. So we're in a season now of learning, of grieving, of defining. One of the things, Sarah, as you and I were talking about in our other conversation on God Hears Her, about what is a strong woman. My daughter's been, I think it's fair to say, victimized in a lot of spaces in her life. And as a 4-year-old, she's now coming to understand things, and so am I. And you can look at those experiences, a lot of trauma around those experiences, and we can define ourselves that way because it's truthful. But then I look at the fact that she's still alive, and she's become a single mom, and she's working full-time to support her son, and she's a good friend, and she's a dear daughter and a good sister-in-law. And I think she's not just a victim, she's an overcomer. And I see strength in that. So my current years are, they're going to always be something, Sarah, and I think that's the message I want to give out to us. It's tempting, and a lot of people get a happy little life in a little box, with a red front door, and it's cute with a wreath on it. And a lot
Or
of
they
us get,
seem to, but
there you go. A lot of us
Yeah.
get a little bit messier one, but they're all good, and they all count, and God's in all of them with us.
Okay, that reminds me of this quote by J.I. Packer. The Christian can know that every single thing that happens to us expresses God's love to us and comes to us for the furthering of God's purpose for us. Thus, as far as he is concerned, God is love to him, holy, omnipotent love at every moment and in every event of every day's life. Even when he cannot see the why and wherefore of God's dealings, he knows that there is love in and behind them, and so he can rejoice always, even when, humanly speaking, things are going wrong. I love that
So
quote.
good.
And it's so true.
Good.
It's so true. And I love learning about your daughter, and just, gosh, that's so heavy. As a mom, well, I'm just now entering this parenting adult kids phase. And, my 2 oldest are in college. And so it is a weird feeling when they're experiencing this pain away from you, and you actually can do nothing about it. I was thinking about this recently as one of my daughters was going through something hard, and I wanted so badly to fix it. But there was literally nothing I could do. Although I spent a lot of time, walking and thinking about conversations I should have and ways I could fix the problem. Fortunately, I did not act on those. But then I was thinking about Hunter, my 8-year-old, and he has pain. Most of the time, it's because he's inflicted pain on himself by climbing too high on something. But I can usually fix that with a hug, with a Band-Aid.
Yes. It's different.
And then it gets heavier, though, right? And
Yeah.
talk to me. Tell me advice about parenting these adult kids.
Well, I'm rounding it with my grandson now. So he's 21. So I'm in my second round. And he is on the precipice of moving out from his mom, my daughter, and I'm watching them do it big.
Yes.
Because we can't just go, oh, I think it's time for me to move out. That's
Yeah,
the
right.
next adult step. No, we have to go, so
Yeah.
that we have to move out. And I'm just watching, and I couldn't see it quite as clearly as I do now when my daughter went big or my son went big.
Yeah.
But I guess the one thing I would say is the very natural individuation seasons where an adult child, wants to be separate from their parent, can feel incredibly threatening, scary, tumultuous, and like a crisis to both parent and child.
Mm-hmm.
The parent is like, I can't fix this. And then you go into your own, what's going to happen to them and fear. And then you go into the, who am I now and what do I do? The child goes into, they make me crazy. They won't let me be me. And then they start being me. And then they're like, oh my gosh, they're going to let me be me. Now what do I do? Now who am I?
Yeah.
It's so natural is what I want to say. And I can't give you a peanut butter cracker and a cup of milk and say it's all going to be cool, because a lot of times it's not. I mean, some horrible things have happened to my kids, and they've made some choices that they regret. But they were their choices. And, I come alongside to be with them and to learn and to make more mistakes myself. So, but I think as much as I can, I want to normalize that. That's what I want to say is this is the journey of humankind, of human development. It's the freedom God entrusts to us with our kids. And, I think reality is our friend. And I think as we do our work with God and we continue to grow with Him and relinquish our kids to Him and keep the relationship as honest and as healthy as we can, and they know we're there for them, it's kind of all we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. So 2 years ago, our family has wonderful family friends, and they lost their daughter. She's 17. And she died unexpectedly. And she was good friends with my girls. And so they were going through grief. And then we loved this family. They were going through grief. And I was so struck and maybe convicted in a gentle way about the way I pray for my kids during that time. Because I had this Holy Spirit conviction where I felt like He was really confronting me with what is it that you really want for your kids?
Yeah.
Because I was praying, please keep them safe and, this kind of stuff. And I was like, I want them to love you. And so I was really convicted about the way I was praying, because it's like, okay, I do want them. I do want them to be safe. I do want them to flourish, right? But ultimately, I can trust the Lord with them. Even though I may not be able to understand everything He's doing with them, but I can trust the Lord with them. And my prayer is that they love Him no matter what. And so I don't always pray that. Some days I do end with, but if you could keep them safe, because I don't think that's bad either. But anyway, I've been convicted about that, and I'm trying to.
That's great, Sarah.
Take that worry to the Lord, because I do trust Him ultimately.
He asks us to trust Him. That's what He asks us. And I think it's a great prayer to pray that they would love Him. And there's this constant open hand of relinquishment, like Abraham and Isaac, and like Mary on the cross looking at Jesus, this constant open hand. I know Mary had, even though she knew He was going to be the Messiah, I don't think she had any understanding of the pain her son would have to endure for us, for herself as much. And, I look at her and I think that's the ultimate sacrifice that a mother made, is to relinquish her son to die on the cross for the rest of us. It blows me away. I used to pray, this is a stupid prayer now, help my kids to get caught.
Oh,
well,
no.
Well,
because,
they did.
Yeah. No, that's actually a great prayer. I've prayed that too.
Yeah. And, you can put your body down over the pothole cover, the manhole cover in the street, and they'll pick it up and throw you off and dive down it. I mean, that's part of what kids do. And I think in such moments, that's where we lean into what we believe about God. All of parenting is an exercise, a journey, and do I really believe what you say is true?
Yeah.
And the joy of it is we don't have to do it alone. We can often do it with a spouse, and if we're not able to do it with a spouse, we can do it with others in a community of believers.
Yeah.
And that's where our strength comes from, as we remind each other that God is faithful.
Yeah, because I like that. We're not meant to do it alone. Okay. So now you're in the season of grandparenting and you're out of leading MOPS group. What are you learning about serving the Lord in this season of life?
When I stepped down from leading MOPS International, then now the MomCo Global, I really did it as the Lord made it very clear to me it was time for the next generation to take over, and they have. They're doing it beautifully. Now, I was younger then. I was just in my early 50s, but I was like, what do I do? And everybody was like, I can't wait to see what you do next. And I was like, I'm really tired. But eventually, I found a ministry home at Our Daily Bread Ministries, and I do a lot of videos and radios and podcasts and stuff for them. But I began about 5 years ago to very intentionally look at what does the rest of life look like? And I actually did some study. I took a kind of a program with other people who were very curious about this. And I was actually very stuck because, as I shared, my personality is an achieving personality. And I thought to myself, am I just going to cease to exist when I retire, when my whole personality is pointed at doing, at accomplishing? And it really bothered me. But as I studied and read and prayed and learned from others, a contribution from Henry Nouwen got my attention, and he talked about that in the latter part of life. Our real job is to grow character, not achievements. And I think about the fruit of the Spirit, and I think about relationships of mentoring with other people. I think, too, about how, as you look at the layers of life, and we talked about when grown adult kids start to individuate and separate from their parents and become their own humans, truly independent. Well, there's, Eric Erickson does human development back in the day, and he talks about the age of generativity versus stagnation, which is a retired person or an older person who just kind of gives up.
Yeah.
Versus generativity, they're still generating, creating something. And as I studied that, I realized biblically that what we're called to do is create character, allow God to create his image in us more and more, and then for us older generation to bless and encourage and equip the younger generations. That's our job.
Yeah.
So do we get paid for it? I still do, which is kind of cool. But my orientation in my work, where it could be to achieve and move up, and that's kind of always what it has been.
Right.
The Lord's really shifted me, and I lead out. I might lead two people up, but I do it from where I am at a different level. And then I do bless and encourage and try to raise up those coming behind me. And God, I pray, will you grow your character in me? Will you see that? I have a lot of friends who are, I like to call it, for lack of a better phrase, facing diminishments. Diminishments of aging. They're very humiliating. They're very hard when you're used to driving and hosting all the holidays and all the things.
Yeah.
And I had to go through this with my grown girls. I'm like, this year, that year, and they're like exhausted. And when do we get to host? And I need to turn that over to you. But there's a sacred calling in the diminishment. And it doesn't mean you're always on the loser side.
Yeah.
What it means is you have a very intentional investment in your own character and how you might be remembered and how you interact with others, your family, neighbors, people, grandkids, etc.
I think that's a unique way to view it, and a biblical way to view it, but it's so hard as you age. I was talking with my mentor, Barbara, who is in her 80s. I said, well, what is service to the Lord? Like I'm asking you right now, like, what does service to the Lord look like in your 80s? And she said, it's wonderful. I'm learning my own limitations, like she said, there's a lot of women's gatherings at her church, and she's very invested in the women in her church. But she said, I realize I can't do big events anymore. And she wasn't sad about it. And she just said, so I try to have one-on-one, and I invite people over to the house a lot, just one-on-one, because that's where I do the best. And she has just always had this posture of mentoring, and so it's just gone with her throughout all the decades. But she was telling me, she kind of went through each decade. Like, in this decade, I loved it for this reason, and for this one, I loved it for this reason. She had a different, and I just thought that is good for us to think about at any age. Like, where am I right now? And am I trying to be in a different decade than I am? Or
so good.
How do I look forward without dread, but with the hope that the Lord is continuing to do his work in us? And so any thoughts about limitations that you would add?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that come to mind as you're sharing. And one is that I'm constantly saying, you're not done. Just because you're older doesn't mean you're done. If you were done, you'd be dead. And one of my friends is 102. She was one of the original MOPS moms. Her name is Naomi. And she wonders, what is my purpose still? She's in an assisted living place and can do not as much for herself. And she wonders, what is my purpose? And I just hold on to that. If I'm not dead, I'm not done. There must be something. I think one thing I really focus on also is presence. And I think your friend Barb models that beautifully. You can be present as much as you can stay awake, as much as you can control your mind, whatever. You can be present and you understand your limitations and you live within them. Another one of my friends says, my world is smaller. It's a smaller world. Right. And so she, at first she could only drive, I think it was 34 miles in a circumference, and now she's lost her license, period. And so her world is a shrinking world. And my 102-year-old friend is a shrinking world. It's down to her room and her assisted living home. But within that world is still an investment. The Lord gave me a phrase a while back that also kicked me, and I like how Barb too is going through the decades of this is for this and this is for this. And because I've not been pregnant and I haven't given physical birth, that concept of birth has always been very metaphorical as well to me and spiritual. I was reading in Genesis chapter 4 where Eve, it says, with the help of the Lord, gave birth to a man, to a child. And I thought to myself, with the help of the Lord, what will any of us give birth to? And for sure, in our earlier years, as a woman, as a mom, many give birth to children, that we might also give birth to a ministry idea or to a relationship or to a concept or to a book or to a degree or to a job or to a marriage, etc. But even in later life, that concept of metaphorically, what will I midwife at midlife, kind of thing? What will I midwife at later life? What will God use me to create? And maybe it's an example of prayer, or maybe it's I have another friend who has a letter writing ministry, and it's scrawly, but it works. I have another one
Yeah.
who knits blankets. I have another one who simply calls people.
Yeah.
All of those sound really crotchety and old, but they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm not yet in those. What I'm headed towards is my older friends who are being diminished. I'm trying to help them.
Yeah.
I remember them. I know them. I know the rest of them, and I can hold their memories,
Yeah.
And when I'm with them, the rest of them is with them as I bring it to them. So those are some kind of complicated ideas, but they're very meaningful to me.
I really love that. Well, and I can't help but tell this story of, it's actually my husband's story to tell, but he's not on the Strong Women podcast, so I'm going to tell it.
Oh, wow.
But when
time.
he was in ninth grade, for his Bible class right before Christmas, the teacher paired up an older kid with a younger kid. So John was the younger kid. He was ninth grade. Paired up with somebody who could drive. It was this older kid. And they were given 3 names of shut-ins to go visit and,
Awesome.
sing Christmas carols or whatever. Well, John says, this is not my words because I didn't know John at this time, but he says he was a knucklehead and the guy going with him was a bigger knucklehead at that time. And so they actually said, and he wasn't interested in the Lord at all, even though he was at a Christian school in a Christian family, he just wasn't real interested. But so the older kid and John decided they would throw away 2 of the names and say they lost them. And go visit the one name and then go meet up with the girls at the mall. Okay,
so that would be the definition of knuckleheads right there.
Yes. Yeah, I'm kind of glad I didn't know him at this time in life. But anyway, the lady that they went to see was a shut-in. She was in her 80s at the time, I think, late 80s, and her son had built a little, enclosed the garage and made it into a room. So that's where she lived, and she couldn't leave the room. So anyway, John and this guy show up, and her name is Omega Buckner.
Oh, I love it.
Isn't that fantastic?
It's beautiful.
So they go in, and Omega says, let's sing a Christmas carol, and they sing, and she only wanted one because apparently these boys could not sing. And she said, well, how about we pray? And so John prayed, and the guy prayed, and that took up 20 seconds. And then Omega prayed, and John said, he wasn't interested. Remember, he wasn't interested in the Lord at all. But she prayed, and he had to look up because he was like, I've never heard anybody pray this way.
Oh my gosh.
So they leave her house. He continues being a knucklehead for a couple more years, and he wakes up one day, right around Christmas time again, his senior year of high school, and he's still not really walking with the Lord. He's dating a girl he shouldn't be dating. She had a car, he didn't.
There you go. Knucklehead again. Yeah.
Yeah. And he wakes up and he just is like, I have to go see Omega Buckner. He hadn't talked to her at all. He had one interaction with her. And he just felt like, I got to go see her. So he convinced his girlfriend, the one with the car, to take him to see. She thought the idea was so stupid, she wouldn't even get out of the car. And he walks up to the door. He knocks on the door. And Omega answers. And he says, hi, Mrs. Buckner. My name is John Stone Street. I don't know if you remember me. And she said, John, I prayed for you this morning.
Oh.
She could not leave this room. She couldn't leave the room. And she prayed for John every single day of her life after she met him. And when John came back, he did eventually come to really take his faith seriously, thank the Lord. Not too much after that, actually. And he came back to help with the youth group in the summers, and he would take young boys to go visit Miss Omega. And and one time he took these 2 ninth grade boys, and they leave, and they're just like, man, that lady's awesome. And the other kid's like, I know, I want to marry someone just like her.
Oh my gosh, that
and
is
at that
so
point,
precious.
she's like 90,
Yeah.
So,
she's my dream girl. Yeah.
So I always think of that. I have that story tucked in my mind for so many reasons. I cannot wait to meet Omega, this lady who chose to pray for my husband every single day of her life.
Yes.
Praise the Lord. And who knows how her prayers have impacted our whole family. I know they have. So I can't wait to talk to her about that. But I also have this story tucked away in my head because I think about my future, growing older is, my mom always says, growing old is not for wimps. And I think about the impact that she had in so many lives. And there's more stories about Omega, but for time's sake, I won't tell them. But she did impact a lot of people through just her prayer. And we say just, but of course we know prayer is powerful. But yeah, it's not over. It's not over till it's over. And God has called us to this time and place for a reason, and invites us to participate with him all the way through. So to any of you listeners out here, I hope this is encouraging. Like, seasons change, our limits change, and our abilities change. You know, with limits sometimes comes more flexibility. and so I don't know, what how would you encourage our listeners to take what we've talked about and run with it?
Here's a reality that it's like once you see it, you never unsee it, kind of thing. I was blown away by realizing this. Jesus only had 3 years of active ministry. 30 years inactive ministry. 2,000 years inactive ministry. Where is he? He's right here, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We have 3 years of his life. What if we allowed our eyes to move from the active ministry to the passive ministry of our lives, Because that's what Omega did. And she's gone now, I'm presuming. Yeah. And she's still impacting. Just like Jesus is gone, he's given us the Holy Spirit, still impacting. And I heard this story, a priest shared it with us. He had been counseling a woman who had a very difficult, broken family, and she cried for them to come to know God, for them to be reconciled. She prayed every single day. She had cancer. She was diminished, declining. The whole thing with the hospital bed in the middle of the family room, and everybody comes to see her, and she doesn't see any reconciliation, and she slips into a coma, and she's dying. And one by one, her kids come to her bedside and hold her hand and talk to each other. And eventually she dies and they continue. It was her passivity. It was just her presence that brought them together. And I think about that, and I just think it isn't over until it's over. And even after that, it's not over. God can be trusted to redeem everything. And if we live like we're redeemed and live like he is in the business of redeeming, then even in our passive lives and even in our deaths, he can leave this legacy that draws others to himself.
That's so good. Okay, Elisa, 2 more questions for you. What books are you reading?
Okay. I'm going to get kind of heady, if you will. One's called Jobs to Be Done, which is by a group of people. You can find it. I'm reading it for the work that I do with the seminary as I chair their board. But it helps you relook at really what are you trying to accomplish through a ministry or through your business. Jobs to Be Done. Another one's called Be the Bridge by Latasha Morrison, which is a beautiful book about understanding our racial conversations and how we can improve them. So those now.
Good stuff. Okay, last question.
Oh, but I'm also reading fiction. I'm reading James by Percival somebody or another. Okay. And it's the Tom Sawyer thing, but from the perspective of Jim.
Okay, last question. What woman from history would you like to have coffee with?
Queen Elizabeth.
Okay, so tea. Tea and not coffee.
Yeah, Queen Elizabeth. I think she was remarkable.
Yeah.
I just would really love to know, I watched The Crown and all that stuff, but I'd love to know how she governed so long, so faithfully, and so well. Yeah. And she loved God, as I understand it, and I just would love to sit in that gorgeous place as she lived and listen to her.
Yes. Good. Okay, thanks, Elisa, for coming on with me today.
Thanks, Sarah.
And thanks, listeners. I'll see you next week.